Good morning and welcome to the Female VC Lab podcast. I have Nissa on today in one line. Nissa, can you give me your name, your title, and the name of your fund?
Nisa Amoils, a100x Ventures, and
Awesome.
founding partner.
Wonderful. So what inspired you to become a venture capitalist or an investor?
Yeah, so I've been in venture now for over a decade, and I started out as an angel investor. I was an entrepreneur before,
Mhm.
and before that, I was a corporate securities lawyer. I had worked under Barry Diller in the early
Oh, wow.
2000s,
Barry
and
Diller. I know who
yeah,
that is.
and that
I
was
met
like,
him once.
oh, very
Yes.
nice. Did he scream at you?
No, he did not.
Okay, good.
He was very
Um,
gentlemanly.
Okay, great. We were acting like a venture firm within what's now called IAC or Interact,
Yes.
but
Hmm. Hmm.
was in different forms back then.
Yes.
And so we were investing in the early stages of the internet,
Hmm.
things
Yes.
like Match.com and Ticketmaster City Search and things like
And the Travelocity, you guys were the first one to get in
Travelocity.
on that
Yeah.
as well. Hmm.
And so I guess I had always been on the path, really. There was no like sharp right turn. It was
Right.
just an evolution. As I started to invest more in technology, I started to do it in the fund structure as opposed to as an angel. And I joined a fund in New York and then joined another fund and now running my own fund.
Well, that's wonderful. So, what is your investment thesis and what is the motivation behind your thesis?
Sure. We're investing in blockchain and AI enabled businesses that have some form of impact, social
Hmm.
impact, economic.
Hmm.
And while we've been investing in crypto assets and DeFi for over 5 years,
Hmm.
we feel that the next wave of innovation really is happening in these other sectors that are using the technology that are overlooked or undershopped, I would say. If they don't have a token attached to them,
Hmm.
then certain crypto investors won't even look at them. And then if it's an impact space, there are a lot of impact funds, but they don't really understand the technology well enough
Correct.
to deploy. So
Hmm.
we found that there was this white space in the market, and we both left our funds to go after it and really serve founders that were building to solve real world problems in not only financial services, but also healthcare, supply chains, climate change, identity, title,
Hmm.
legal, security, all these other use cases that have
Right.
been quietly building for the past several years, but are not necessarily the hyped up bubble sectors.
That's great. That's awesome. So, what are you currently learning or listening to or reading these days?
I listen to a lot of trade podcasts and read them because I write for Forbes. Part of what I have to do is be up on every sector in digital assets.
Hmm.
But also, I recently read a book called Backable by Sunil Gupta, and
Oh.
that's Sanjay Gupta's brother. Yeah, it was great because he studied people across industries for
Hmm.
years
Hmm.
and what were the qualities that made them backable. And it's not
Interesting.
always the most dynamic person. It's a lot of other factors that go into it. So I highly recommend the book.
Sounds interesting. I might have to get that one and read it.
Just came out.
Some of my summer reading in my infinite free time. In 2 years, when we're talking again, how do you see venture capital or investing having evolved or changed?
So it's already happening, right? We're headed
Hmm.
towards decentralization and democratization, hopefully. Part of the reason we aligned with AngelList on a rolling fund was that exact reason,
Hmm.
that they're trying to be more inclusive. The accredited investor laws have broadened slightly. There's probably more room to go there.
Yes.
And we feel that, and I wrote a book about this a few years ago, just the women and minorities getting so little of the venture funding
Mhm.
as founders and also as fund managers. That is being disrupted now. if you look just purely at DeFi or crypto, even what happened in the ICO bubble,
Yeah.
there were alternative ways of raising capital that were more peer-to-peer, didn't necessarily rely on the systemic barriers that exist still in our system.
Yes.
And there have been a lot of people who've been trying for years and years, myself included, to break down those systemic barriers to allow wealth creation to go towards women and minorities. And I think it's really important. That's why with our fund, we have a lower minimum for women and minorities. And we set it up purposely that way because we feel that it's prohibitive for most, even if they're accredited investors and there are only 8 million in the US, it's prohibitive for them to spend that amount of money to invest in broad diversified exposure and to get the education by doing. So we want to make it inclusive. We want to educate everybody about this sector in particular. We feel like it's very important for women and minorities to be part of crypto and blockchain and AI.
100%.
So that's where we see venture going.
That's wonderful. So how do people get into contact with you?
I am on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter at Amoils Nisa, and they can go to my website, which is just nisaamoils.com, or they can go to a100x.com.
Well, thank you so much, Nisa from a100x.com for being my guest on the Female VC Lab podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.